right, here we go. Betting Weekly, The Edge, coming at you here on a Wednesday, getting ready for NFL week number 3, sides and totals. We got it all for you today. Mike Carver here with you, of course, with Doug Kezirian. Doug, it is great to see you. As always, my man, another week in the books. We're rolling along right into week 3. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, it's always tricky early in the NFL season. We think we know what we know, but it's really still has an asterisk next to it, right? We had preconceived notions coming in to the regular season, particularly with the preseason becoming less and less of an indicator. And then the first 2 weeks give us a decent sort of indication, at least. I think that's the best way to put it. But still, the verdict out in so many ways, Mike, and I just can't really come in with such certainty on anything. So I'm really still treading lightly in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm kind of doing a little bit of the same so far, Doug. You know, you've seen some pretty weird things. One that I saw today, which I thought, as you look kind of big picture before we get into the games, was favorites, big favorites, 4+ points, 12-0, straight up so far this year. So we haven't had like that big upset. Remember last year, first week, huge upset New England. Second week, the Raiders in Baltimore. You had a lot of dogs winning. So far, Doug, the big chalk has been winning these games outright, even though the cover has been about kind of in the middle, even 50-50.
I blame Brian Daboll. I mean, you cannot have the ball with 2 minutes to go and end up losing, let alone a tie. Just knucklehead play calling, knucklehead clock management. Can't throw that interception, Russ, on second down. Really frustrating if you're in survivor pools and did not have the Cowboys. You should have had a portion of the pool eliminated. But even that, we almost had a backdoor with the Panthers. That they at least got the cover against Arizona. So we're starting to see some of the craziness. And we saw craziness at the end on Monday night in game 1. We just didn't have it on a certain game. So it's coming. The witching hour is the sports bettor's bitching hour, as I like to say. It's always sort of nonsense and unexpected and just bizarre behavior in the fourth quarter. It just hasn't impacted certain games, but we're still getting the point spread drama like we always get. So it is coming. It is coming. None of these should be written in pen when we see these 6-point favorites, these 5.5-point favorites.
What's some of the keys that you're kind of looking for here as you get to week 3? We talked about data points last week. We talked about gathering some more information. Now we have 2 games from some teams, and for some teams, Doug, let's be fair. Like, I'll take the Steelers as an example. You've got one game where it's like, wow, look at the Steelers, their offense. And then they were so awful against the Seahawks on Sunday. You got a lot of teams in that mixed bag. How are you going to approach week 3?
Well, it's a great point because, if you have a model like a computer and you lean on that, they'll sort of weed out the noise, if you will, and have truer indicators moving forward. But from an eye test standpoint, which most of us are, it's really about just kind of remembering the nonsense. Like the Steelers were fine until the kickoff and Caleb Williams forgot the rules, and then things got out of hand. Would the Dolphins be 1-1 if the guy didn't step out of bounds, right? I mean, they get the punt return for a touchdown and then give up a kick return. And then even then they had an option and had a situation. So are we ready to pour dirt on the Dolphins? Are they that bad, or would we look at them differently 1-1? I think that's the key. Look how we view certain teams in a lot of ways. Would 1-1 be so different than 0-2, or would 1-1 be that different with 2-0? Some of these teams, the margin, I was just talking about a second ago with all this chalk holding up, at least from a straight up standpoint. How would we look at these teams differently, right? Baker Mayfield's MVP talk. Well, what if a 4th and 12 didn't get converted and it's 1-1? See, I do think like the Texans, for example, yes, they could be close to 1-1, but I think the play calling's been terrible. It took DeMeco Ryans over a half to realize that the Bucs were throwing short right after the snap because they had 2 offensive linemen down. How well coached are they? Their own O-line issues. I don't think they're a very good football team. I think they have good stretches because they have playmakers, but in general, I don't think they're that great. So even though they're such a play away from being 1-1, I don't think they're really that impressive. So that's how I'm looking at it. It's more like note taking and playing devil's advocate if you don't have the modeling to kind of, eliminate the noise and trim the fat. I think that's the best way to go about things. But again, in a 17-game season, only one bye in each conference, you have to remember these teams don't play as great as they've played or as badly as they've looked. They're all closer to the middle. So just be careful when you fire on these teams. Like some of these teams are really not that bad. For example, Carolina should have been blown out in both games, right? They get the onside kick, things like that. They're still an 0-2 team and an 0-2 ATS team in my eyes. I think they got bailed out by the refs and a fluky onside kick. In my eyes, the way I see Carolina, they're 0-2 ATS.
Yeah, and we will talk about them. They're a home dog this week against Atlanta. We will get to that as we start to roll through all of the games for week number 3 here. Sides and totals on Betting Weekly. The Edge, of course, part of the Bet Rivers podcast network. All right, Doug, let's start with Thursday night. Bills and the Dolphins in the below. An enormous spread, our biggest of the week. We got the Bills minus 12 right now at Bet Rivers. And I'll give you a couple things on this series because I love this. Josh Allen destroys the Miami Dolphins. I mean, you look at Allen, it's been smash jobs for him. 6 in a row. Allen's 13-2 against Miami. Most of the games in Buffalo have been very bad. The Dolphins are 0-2, looking brutal. Doug, that's a big number, though, for a Thursday night. 12 points.
There is. And the teams that travel on the short week, typically it's more pronounced in the second half of the season. So what's the narrative? Anytime there's a betting trend, I'm like, what's the narrative here? Does it pass the smell test? And it's like, yeah, the Dolphins aren't beat up from half the season and then have short week, lighter practice, all that stuff. They're still kind of fresh in the season, right? I do think they're dejected after losing that game, and now they got to go face Josh Allen, like you said, who's just, kind of the varsity playing against the JV seemingly all the time. I know sharp money's coming on the underdog. I know it was 12.5, 13, and then it got bet down. I do think the Dolphins are much better than maybe they looked in game one. Well, I guess it's impossible not to be any worse. I would look at the over here. I think the Bills, are coming off obviously the huge emotional win in week 1, but they weren't ready to play. It's not like they emptied the gas tank, which is why I think they were sharp in game 2. And I just think they're going to kind of go through the motion. So if I'm in a pick 'em league, I take the dog. Maybe I'm not ready to completely sell on the Dolphins. The problem is Tua's just not that good. Okay. He can't make certain plays because of the injuries over the years. So he can't tuck it and run full throttle. And there's just certain throws he can't make. I just think he's just not that good of a quarterback. And we just have to accept that, regardless of what he did in college. And the Bills are that special. Now, last week, there was super sharp money on the Jets. And then at the end of the day, people had to ask themselves why they were betting Fields against Josh Allen. Here, I think Tua's a little better, and the offense can put up points, but the defense has been putrid. It really has. We just don't know just how bad it is because of, again, the transitive property, who they face. Like New England's looked pretty good, right, on offense at times. You wonder now about the Raiders, but I would take the Dolphins in the points in a lean. I wouldn't bet it. I just think there's got to be better things to bet. But I think if I had to pull the trigger, I would bet the over. I think the Bills defense can give up some points. Fields is not really a passer. So I think the best play on Thursday Night Football is the over. I think we do see some points because I think Buffalo can score at will.
I like it, especially since, like you said, the Bills are banged up on D. I know it didn't matter in East Rutherford against the Jets on Sunday, but on a short week, Doug, it is going to matter. And I like the 12 as well here. This is the kind of game where that back door is going to be swinging open, right? Like I could see 31-14, late fourth, Bills don't care. And then Tua to Waddle with a Bucs 17 to go. And suddenly it's 31-21. And you're sitting there on the wrong side, but on the right side of the over, Doug, if that were to happen very late in the game. Let's now, Sunday night, we'll go to where the Chiefs and the Giants get together. I was going to ask you, Doug, about 0-2 teams. This is a little different because both teams are 0-2, and you feel the desperation, especially, Doug, when one of them is Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs coming off the home loss against the Eagles. 0-2. I saw the stat earlier. 0-2 teams, 12% since they went to 14 in the playoffs. That's only 5 out of 41. Never tell Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid the odds, though, Doug.
I think you have to take each sort of stat like that from a historical perspective into context, because the 0-2 stats, the playoffs have changed. They added a game, right? So they added a game to the regular season, and then they added a playoff team. So teams 0-2 that like have a better chance to make the playoffs now than it was prior to the 17 game schedule. And I just think you have to look at it through that. So I think the Chiefs, the verdict's still out. I understand the line move from 5.5 to 6. It's a big difference. 6 is a very common key number that most people forget about. We all know 3, we all know 7. 6 is right there. So from 5.5, which is kind of a dead number, to 6 is a big move. Who have the Chiefs lost to, right? They could have easily won that game last week, right? The Kelsey pick, the deflection into a pick. And then obviously the Chargers are really good. So, starting 0-2 is not disaster for the Chiefs. Now, the Giants certainly didn't look the part in game one. Now, they should have won. I would absolutely love the Chiefs in this game if the Giants had hung on and be a 1-1 team at home and all that, blah, blah, blah. The problem is the Giants just have too many holes. I just don't know if the Chiefs can exploit them. I think the Chiefs get the win. But I do think with Neighbors and everything, the Giants offense, like if you remove Neighbors, like I would lay 7, right? Like I just think he's so valuable. He's such a difference maker and a cheat code and a bailout option. The Giants do have a defensive front that is okay, and the secondary is okay. I just think the Chiefs are going to be all business. So if I had to play this, I would lay the 6, but maybe the Sharps come in and move it to 5.5. But I just think it's really hard to fade Patrick Mahomes in this spot. Now, granted, you're not asking him to lose; you're asking him just not to cover 6 if you take the dog. But I'd probably ultimately want to be on the Giants, but I wonder at their mood given last week.
I sat here last week, Doug, telling you about how abysmal Russell Wilson and the Giant offense was against Washington. And you talk about Jekyll and Hyde in week 1, week 2. I mean, the guy throws for 450 yards in Dallas on Sunday. I know the Cowboy defense has a lot to do with that. But can we a little bit of a believer in the Giants, maybe from an over standpoint? Are they going to score some points this week?
I think so much depends on Andrew Thomas. I think he's really that valuable, their left tackle. So he's expected to play, and that's the case today in practice. But, I mean, I don't usually put everything hinging on one left tackle, but it's a monster position, and we've certainly see how vulnerable this offense is. But I don't think the Chiefs are going to give up huge plays like the Cowboys. Cowboys defense is terrible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they should have 2 overs already, right? Game 1, the week Thursday night opener, how that stayed under is crazy. So I just think the Chiefs defense and Spags and everything, I think they'll be ready for this team. And it's such a big, I mean, I got to wait to get the official status of Andrew Thomas.
I'm glad that you're with us here on the Betting Weekly Studios. If you like what you hear on our show, sign up for our newsletter, get exclusive tips, and the free Insider magazine. Sign up for free at bettingweeklystudios.com. Go and get involved. All right, Doug, next. Let's go to the Jags and the Texans. We actually got a lot of these teams. You kind of mentioned it at the top from Monday Night Football with the doubleheader. We saw some really distinct performances. The Raiders, Doug. I had the Raiders late night on Monday. I couldn't believe it. The Raiders. Oh, how bad was Geno on Monday? We'll get there in a moment. Let's start with the Texans because you kind of set them up a little bit at the top of the show. They now go to Jacksonville to see the Jaguars. Texans have won 12 of their last 14. We've had a lot of these division streaks that I've given you recently, Doug. Last week with the Giants, Cowboys, you had the Bills, Dolphins, and now this one, Jags -2 at home, total 44. Jags coming off a loss in Cincinnati to Browning after Burrow left the game. What do you think here?
I'm on the Jags here. I don't think much of the Texans. I don't think they have the right locker room to go on a short week. I like fading teams off Monday night. I prefer fading them off wins. But this Jags team is a much more complete team than people realize. The Carolina game was sort of a throwaway. They did not look good in the second half, they being the Jags. Last week, I don't know how they lost that game, and I definitely don't know how they didn't cover. But I think the Jags at home in the South Florida Heat, or the Florida Heat, I should say, against a Houston team that it looks disjointed, can't seem to get out of their own way. Their offensive line is weird. There's no chance in hell I'd want to go to battle with a ticket on the Texans +2. So I'm on the Jags. I like them. I don't love them. It's going to be a sweat. Verdict is still out with their head coach, but like I pointed out, the Texans have done nothing to impress me. I don't see how Houston all of a sudden puts this together. They've made too many dumb mistakes from a clock management standpoint and things along those lines.
Yeah, and that kind of with D'Amico Ryans, I know he's had a good start his first couple of years as a head coach in the NFL. I'm still not completely sold, Doug, on Ryans. I think that some of his teams the last few years have bailed him out a little. I don't think he's a great in-game manager, as you're saying,
Great.
with his timeouts and with his switches and changing things up. Ryans has not been good with that stuff. Last 3 years, last 3 games, I should say, 3 points, 4 points, 3 points. And the totals, Doug, 42, 43, 44, right on our total of 44 in this game. So Jags and Texans have been pretty much right in that ballpark the last couple of years when they have gotten together. The other side of that early Monday night game was the Bucs beating the Texans. They now get to go home where they will see the Jets coming off of that embarrassing performance against the Bills and a quarterback change here, Doug, for the Jets as well. Justin Fields is out. Tyrod Taylor is in. Bucs minus 743.5 at Bet Rivers.
So this is an upgraded quarterback. I've been a big fan of Tyrod Taylor. I think he's strong. Not like world class, but I think he's good. Definitely more of a thrower than Fields. And we've learned this with Sam Darnold resurrecting his career in Carolina a little bit, and then obviously Minnesota. And even the veteran quarterbacks who retired, like Peyton Manning, won a Super Bowl when his arm was noodle. So much of this position requires a mental aspect. Tyrod Taylor is a veteran. The game slows down for all veterans. It's processing, it's understanding the complexities of the position. He's a much better quarterback now than he was a handful of years ago because he's just got the 10,000 hours, the reps under him. Veteran quarterbacks, and that's why I think Jake Browning has been a decent backup in that regard and has an op. So, like, even Bryce Young got better by going to the sideline and just understanding it's just a really difficult position. So I think Taylor's a weapon here. I like the Jets +7. The Bucs O-line is in shambles. It's coming off a win on Monday night. Jets +7 is one of the better picks of the day. The problem is, I have PTSD from taking them +6.5 last week at home against the Bills. But this is different. This is different. This is going against the Bucs, who kind of play with their food. The only thing I would say is last year, the Bucs, I believe it's week 3, were 2-0 at home and then didn't show up at all at home as a favorite in game 3. And it was embarrassing. All the comments last year were like, we need to be professional. We can't just mail it in. And I'm just calling up the schedule. Yeah, they were coming in all fat and happy, beat the Lions Sunday night in that playoff rematch, I think it was, or Sunday afternoon, come home, and then they're all fat and happy in Denver spanks them. So I wonder if they've learned from their mistake last year, week 3. I just feel like they'll be a little bit better mentally than they would have without that experience, but I still think the +7 is the right spot.
I like the 7 with the Jets as well, Doug. I like the under here, too. I think that Aaron Glenn, you saw him going a little. Listen, Aaron Glenn's under the gun already. It's 0-2. He's talking very tough with the media. I think he's going to put Tyrod in there this week. This is going to be a very close to the vest, grind it out, we're going to run it type of game. Short week for Tampa. That's the kind of game I'm seeing, Doug. 16-13. Jets covered, maybe Bucs win, right in that kind of area. So under 43.5 is where I'm looking. You heard me grumble about the Raiders. What a disgraceful performance against the Chargers. How bad was Geno Smith, Doug, in that game on Monday night against the Chargers? He just threw another pick, Doug, as I was standing here. Oh, it was brutal.
Terrible. I'm a Raider fan. I've been my entire life growing up in LA, and they were in LA when I was a child. He stinks. I don't know why you pay him $40 million. The team is a mess. They're a little bit more confident than they were with Antonio Pierce, but it doesn't say much. They also have a brutal division. I can't get behind the Raiders at all. I think this is a good bet on the Commanders. Look, Raiders short week. Just because you lose on Monday night doesn't mean you're all of a sudden fresh and ready to come out and undo that loss. Like, they have some pieces, don't get me wrong. But remember, they went to New England, then they're back west. Now they're going back to the east. Commanders have the extra rest 10 days. I think Jaden Daniels is going to play. And if he doesn't, I trust the coaching staff and the wizardry. Give the Chargers credit. They're like a legit team. So I do think Crosby will wreak some havoc and stuff like that. But the Commanders have to bounce back. They were unprepared on that Thursday night game, very vanilla on offense. They didn't show up. I think they have to show up against this Raiders team. 3.5 doesn't scare me. I think that's the only side you can play here.
I think this is a smash job, Doug, for Washington. I think it should be. I think it has to be. It has all those things, those boxes that you like to check, right? Washington's got the longer rest off a Thursday night game. Raiders have the shorter rest. Raiders looked awful. Washington needs to bounce back. Let's go. -3.5 for Washington at home on Sunday. Broncos into LA as the Chargers will finally get home. Remember, they were in Brazil and then went to Vegas against the Raiders. They're a short favorite here, 2.5 points against Denver, who lost to Indianapolis. These two teams also, Doug, they have played some fun games the last couple of years. There was a sweep for LA last year, beat Denver both games in that Harbaugh versus Sean Payton matchup.
It's a tough game because the square, the public plays the Chargers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Broncos played with their food against the Titans in the opener. Crazy situation, should be 2-0, all things considered. I know there's some sharp money on the +2.5, but I can't get it. I can't get there. I think the Chargers are the only side you can play. Just keep this in mind, though. Teams that are 2.5-point favorites are typically weak favorites, right? They're not 3. Teams that are 3.5-point underdogs are usually weak underdogs. It's not 3. With that being said, doesn't mean like every dog that's +2.5 covers. It's the teams that are laying 2.5 often cover. It's just the market's preventing you from getting to 3. I think it'll be at some point -2.5, -125. Bo Nix was not good on the road last year, but they have a great defense. I do think the way the Chargers play, it could lend itself to an under. I do think that. The problem is, but Harbaugh is putting the ball in Herbert's hands. So he's not just bleeding clock. We saw that on Monday trying to run out clock. He was throwing. And that sometimes can cost you an under if you have that and it goes over ultimately. So for me, I just can't get too cute with the Broncos. I think the sharp money, which has been taking it on the chin the first 2 weeks of the regular season, is going to be on the dog, and I just can't get there.
They kept swinging that door open Monday night, throwing the football for the Raiders, right? They just kept swinging that door open for Mendy for a little back door, and they just couldn't do it. You got to get involved. Bet Rivers football squares. That's right. Players who place a qualifying same-game parlay of at least $10 on eligible NFL or NCAA football games will receive one standard entry into the weekly squares game. Winning standard squares will be awarded a prize of a $20 bonus bet. Let's go. See app and website for more details. All right, Doug, next. Let's look at two big dogs here. We talked about the dogs earlier in the show. We haven't had a big outright dog win yet this season through 2 weeks, but the Saints and the Panthers, arguably the two worst teams in the NFL so far, both showed a little bit of life last week. You're looking at either of them here. Carolina getting 6 at home against the Falcons. Saints getting 7.5 out in the Pacific Northwest. Seattle against the Seahawks. But the big dogs, bark, bark.
I think the Seahawks roll. I don't think the Saints are as incompetent as Carolina. I actually think they're probably better on a neutral. I'd have to take them if I had to watch it and bet it. But it's a tough spot to go to Seattle in the 12th man and play. Now, the Seahawks are off a big win, so maybe a little bit of a flat spot. They had the emotional game against San Francisco in the opener. Then they go gut out a win impressively against Pittsburgh, which I did not see coming. But again, the kickoff that I mentioned, things like that. So we're not really sure, but I think the Seahawks handle their business. I do. I don't love Darnold laying this kind of wood, but the Saints have played their first 2 games at home, and they played a Niners team that had a backup and was down Kittle and depleted. And then the opener, Arizona was playing with its food. The Saints may be pretty bad, like we think. Remember, their win total was 6.5 earlier in the summer, got bet down to 5.5 immediately, and still got heavy juice on the under coming into the season. They're expected to be the worst team, and they're expected to tank. However, this Carolina team stinks. I think Bryce Young stinks. He's not an NFL quarterback. At least he's not a starter. And they should get pounded. The problem is it's a good spot for the Panthers. The Falcons, off the big win on Sunday night, that was a must win. Now they're going on the road. I like Penix. He's dynamic, but I just don't know, how I think he's still a little green reading defenses. I think the Vikings did him so much a favor by playing zone and not getting any pressure on him And if you can't get pressure on zone defense, any quarterback can pick you apart. So he was letting it, he was slinging it, and they were just the better team on side. I think they're going to eke out a cover. Like I said earlier, the Panthers really lost double digits both games, as far as I'm concerned. Fluky backdoor. So I would roll with the Falcons here. I like both favorites here. I do think these teams are not putrid, but I don't see them covering. I don't see them losing by single digits here.
Yeah, I don't either. I actually like the over in the Atlanta-Carolina game. Both games last year, Doug, they cracked 50, Atlanta and Carolina. One was a Falcon blowout in Carolina, actually, and then they played a closer game in Atlanta, but it was very high scoring. So I'm going a little up, and away with the Falcons and the Panthers on Sunday. Big game Sunday afternoon in the late window, 4:25 East. Cowboys visiting the Bears. Cowboys now, Doug, we've seen this a little back and forth. Bet Rivers -1 for the Cowboys on the road. Big total, 250.5.
I am so torn here. The Bears have looked pathetic, and Ben Johnson just may not be a good head coach, right? And Caleb Williams, I love him because he went to USC, and I'm a USC fan. I just think there's issues there across the board with this franchise and this team. And the Cowboys have looked okay, right? They obviously looked okay in the opener against the Eagles, and they have an offense. So we know they can put up points. I think the team total's the way to go. I don't think they're going to stop scoring and turn it into a grind out game. So if you're looking at a team total around 26.5, I think that's the play. I think that's the best way to play this game. Just bank on the Cowboys, scoring points. I mean, when they get the opening kickoff, they're in field goal range for Aubrey, so they can get at least 3 points every drive. All they need is 2 first downs, and then the guy can kick from anywhere. So I do think they're special with that offense. I like the tight ends. The O-line's not as bad as we thought. Rushing the ball, they're fine running the ball, but then CeeDee Lamb and company makes them special. So I think don't forget, 2 years ago, Dak, his last full season, Dak was a runner-up in the MVP race. He can put up serious numbers. We saw that against the Giants. The Bears don't offer much resistance at all. I mean, look, the Lions just hung 50 burger on them. Yeah. So I think that's the way to go, Cowboys team total.
I like the Cowboys. I like the team total with you, but I'm going to lay it with the Cowboys -1. Maybe wait around, see where we can get back. But I like the Cowboys here. I love the offense. And, Doug, let's be fair. The Bears, they stink. I'm sorry. That was a gutless effort by them in Detroit last week. I think the Cowboys have been a lot better than people expected. We mentioned last week, they played well in that opening Thursday night game in Philadelphia. Crazy game with the Giants. I get themselves to 2-1 this week. All right, before we get to the favorite bets, Doug, real fast. Couple bonus balls here. Quick thoughts. Number 1, Green Bay -8 into Cleveland against the Browns. Some extra rest for the Packers. Now over a touchdown here, -8 as we mentioned. How about this one?
So it's tough because the Browns defense has played pretty well. They've given up, limited yards in both games, but I just don't see Flacco, who's a statue and fine as a quarterback, but he's a statue, is going to be able to do much against a Packers pass rush and everything. I still think the Packers are kind of on a mission. I'd have to lay it. I do think Green Bay ends up opening up a can. The Browns hanging around with Cincy in week 1. So what? Bengals always start slow. I think the Packers ultimately blow them out.
I'm with you on that one. Detroit in Baltimore is the Monday night game. Really good Monday night game. Ravens -5 right now at Bet Rivers, and a big 53 on Monday night.
Yeah, I'm not a Jared Goff guy. So it's Ravens or pass for me. Lions looked completely overwhelmed on the road against Green Bay. I can see that ultimately happening. The Ravens will bring the noise in this game.
Let's get to some favorite bets. And there's another game I didn't. Actually, we each got a game we haven't mentioned yet, so that works out very well. Why don't we start with you, Doug? What do you got for a favorite bet this week?
So I'm going to go with the over in this Steelers game, which is just crazy because Steelers have been known for their defense for the last handful of years. And I mean, Mike, it sounds crazy. It might be the worst unit in sports, right? That defense. Look how they've been shredded the first 2 weeks, and the Fields shredded them. So I am not optimistic about this team. And then Rodgers can obviously put up some points. New England's defense has obviously not looked good the first 2 weeks. It's a relatively low number. And Belichick over the years would always light up Pittsburgh. And I wonder if, the new regime with Vrabel and everything kind of knows the sweet spots, having played there and everything. I just wonder if they kind of know the Tomlin defense. Feels like a low number. So I'm going to have to roll with some points there. Now, granted, I was on the over last week in the Jets game because of what they did to the Steelers, but I think this is the right play here. Jets, Steelers, and Patriots.
Man, I keep thinking that Tomlin's going to get the defense going, right? Like that's his thing. Like that's his baby. He wants to have that tough, hard-nosed defense, but it just hasn't been there. And we're talking 8 quarters it hasn't been there. Hasn't been there at all in either game. Interested to see if he can finally get some stops this week. I'm going to go to Philadelphia, Doug, for mine. And I'm also going to go up and away. Eagles and Rams, 44.5 this week. Played twice last year. Both games cracked the 50 burger, including that playoff game in the snow. You're going to have a nice track in Philadelphia on Sunday. Great weather for these two. I think the Ram offense has gotten better each week, especially last week in Tennessee. Eagles, we know, are going to be able to score some points. So, Doug, I'm going over the 44.5 with the Eagles and the Rams. Anything for you in Philly?
It's dog or pass, but it's going to be a good watch. That's a lot to ask of the Rams, right? They had trouble at the start. Tennessee, it's back-to-back road games. I'm just not in a rush to take that, but I do think they're legitimate and they're pretty darn good.
I do too. I think the back-to-back weeks on the road is tough for them, especially both on this side, both on the East Coast of things. Doug, let's have ourselves a big week 3 here. I mean, we're going to start. Let's start rolling the train here, Doug, on Betting Weekly The Edge for us and get things cooking. You will be back Betting Weekly The Edge on Friday, same time, 5 o'clock East. You, Adam the Bull, Dustin Fox, you can have some props, some parlays, etc. for us. And I think this is a good week for that too, Doug, because now that's the props. You've really gotten some information. You're ready to pounce now after 2 games.
Well, that's what I was talking about at the beginning of the show, just what you said, Mike. It's about, getting a feel for things, sort of an understanding of quarterbacks and who they like in terms of their preferences and everything. I think we can attack this market pretty well, and we'll do that on Friday.
Great job, Doug. I will see you again next time right here. Betting Weekly, The Edge, every Wednesday, 5 East, 2 Pacific. Betting Weekly Studios, Bet Rivers Network. Great to see everybody. Have a great week 3 in the NFL. We'll see you next time here on The Edge.